The Celtics halted their losing streak at 2 games. They haven't lost more than 2 in a row in over 2 years, and the Nuggets fell because of that. Celtics came into the game without Drew Holiday, without Kristaps Porzingis. In fairness, Denver didn't have Aaron Gordon, and he's a big piece of what they're trying to do as well. We're going to dive into how the Celtics managed to win this game, what strategies they used on defense, right here, right now, on the Celtics Chronicle. Yo, what's popping? If you're new here, my name is Adam Taylor. I cover the Celtics for SB Nation, for USA Today, and most importantly, the Celtics Chronicle newsletter. I'm joined by my co-host, my compadre, cap expert in crime. I messed that intro. Mr. Billy Calabrese, or Popping Billy.
What's up, everybody?
Yo, so the Celtics played a really good defensive game on Sunday, and if you look at the box score in itself, Tatum didn't have the best offensive production. There was some chip-ins from the bench, but then it wasn't fluid as you would hope. They built a lead, dropped the lead, usual shit. But defensively, they really locked in, right? They came into this with a plan, and they executed from start to finish. It was a very similar plan. Shout out to Azad Rose from Celtics. Like, he actually asked Mazzulla about this before the game. It's a very similar plan to what the Lakers did against the Nuggets a few days back. And then the Celtics just, I'm a big fan of seeing what works, taking it and manipulating it to fit what you do and how you do it. And that's a big part of writing, creating content, just anything in life, right? So the Celtics did a bunch. Billy, how did you feel watching that game? I know you was at work, so then you got to watch it on replay. How did you feel about it?
Oh, I thought it was a good old-fashioned rock fight. I love games like this where it's just ugly. You get in the dirt, you get grimy, and it really was defense that won the game. And I thought Joe had 2 different defensive strategies that really worked out well. One is his regular go-to that he does all the time when we play Denver, and that's put Luke Kornet on Westbrook, because it baits Westbrook into thinking that he has just some goof that he could just score on easily. And it takes the rest of the Denver offense out of every play whenever Westbrook gets the ball and sees Luke Kornet on him. And Luke just baits him so perfectly. It's one of my favorite things in basketball.
Yeah, I mean, Westbrook ended the game with 8 threes. That's every time you let Westbrook take a 3, that's a win, a defensive win. Your defense did exactly what it was meant to do. And that's not I'm not shitting on Westbrook. He hit a couple of those threes, and I think he's been having a bit of a resurgence over in Denver this year. So by no means am I trying to shit on Westbrook, but what I'm saying is he's a rim pressure guy. He's a layup, he's a dunk, he's a fast break guy. He plays within controlled chaos. When you're asking him to be a perimeter scorer, you're asking him to do an aspect of the game that he's not great at, that he doesn't excel at. And that is a win because, as you said, you're taking the rest of the offense, but you're also taking him away from the areas that he can be great. So it's a double win there. And then I've wrote about this today, and I'm going to link the article, but I'm really curious to get your take on what the second game plan was for Mazzulla.
So the second part, and it all goes into the same thing, it's we want Jokic to do as little as possible and keep Jokic uninvolved. So the second part that I just loved was having Christian Braun take 22 field goal attempts. I thought that was, hey, if this guy's going to beat us, God bless him. Let's, have at it. But we're not going to let Jokic beat us. And by the end of the game, Jokic just looked unaggressive, uninterested. I mean, his defense alone was just a travesty. I mean, it's probably the worst defense by an MVP ever, but that could be a topic for another day. But I just love how we take Jokic out of the game by getting these other guys' heads, just their egos, and just being like, hey, take the bait. Come on, take the bait.
Yeah, so that was kind of like the crux of what I wrote about today. Now, I was going to premise this by, I subscribe to the idea, the theology, that you let a superstar go off and you shut everybody else down. Because the reason a superstar is a superstar is you're never going to be able to contain them enough. So the onus for me has always been if Jokic scores 50, but nobody else gets into double digits, you did your job, right? And obviously, there was a different mentality coming into this game. And what the Celtics did a bunch of was they walled off the paint. They built a wall around the paint. Now, this isn't a wall like when Giannis is playing and you're just trying to build bodies to stop him from getting to the rim. This was send help early, trap him on the block, have a weak side guy rotate over, have guys pinching in. And then when you trap him, you're going to have guys around kind of like in a semicircle so that his passing outlets are really kind of muddied as well. So now you're playing the gaps while you're playing him, and you're forcing him to make reads that are really difficult. And what happens then is, especially without Aaron Gordon, who can kind of bust that open with his movement, with his catch and shoot threat, Christian Braun becomes the most logical outlet there. And that's what forces him into taking more shots. It also wears on Jokic because it's frustrating, right? Every time you touch the ball, you see an ocean of bodies and you're playing with your back to the basket a bunch. Every time you try and face up, the one thing the Celtics are really good at is knowing when to swipe down and get the ball. It becomes difficult. And over the last few games as well, I just want to point this out, and we'll go into this in a moment. But the Celtics have been great in terms of their gap defense and their passing lane defense, knowing when to jump the lane, knowing when to get deflections. That's really hard for a team like Denver that rely on Jokic's passing and creation, because you've got guys that are just waiting to jump that lane and take the steal. So building that wall around the paint, and it was anything within 4 feet, was a nightmare. So I've got some numbers here. I know we just spoke about this. You haven't read the piece yet. So I'm going to put some of this up on the screen. This article is 100% free on the newsletter today. Every Monday is a free one, and then there's some paid ones throughout the week. I usually throw in some live streams and stuff. If you haven't signed up yet, I'm grateful. Show some love, man. So I'm just putting it up here because I've got the stats, and I'm just going to read them out a little bit. So I want to add context here as much as possible. So this season, as a whole, 38% of Denver's shots come at the rim, within 4 feet of the rim. Right, 38%. They're 10th in accuracy, so they're knocking down 68%. So first in the league for the amount of attempts they have, 10th in the league for accuracy. That's not bad, it's high volume, high success. Against the Celtics, yes, on Sunday, only 22% of their shots came at the rim. So that's a 16% dip in terms of frequency. And that frequency majority went to the perimeter, right? Now, what happens then is the other aspect we're going to get into in a minute is transition basketball, which I don't want to build out to just yet. So I want to stop there. What happened was the Celtics made the Nuggets readjust their entire game plan. They took away 16% of the Nuggets' rim frequency, which meant Denver shots had to come from elsewhere. And when Denver are leading the league in rim attempts and they're a top 10 team in terms of rim scoring, you know that that's a core part of what this team wants to do. And by building out that wall early, sending bodies over, shading help, you were forcing kick out, and then you were taking away from the one thing that Denver really thrive on.
What I really like is we made them play our game and we didn't get caught up playing their game. Because a lot of times when we play some of these more elite teams, we can get caught up and get out of what we do. The Cleveland game's a great example of that. In the second half, we only attempted 11 threes. That's low for us. That's not a good amount of attempts. You don't want to get into the 2-for-2 game because, like I said, our strength is the 3-point line, but Denver's isn't. And we made Denver just baited them into shooting a lot of threes, and they don't have the shooters to back it up.
The next thing the Celtics did was they took away transition. And they took away transition by they usually had a guy pressing up high. Their pickup points were quite high anyway, but they might go full court press with one guy, with two guys. They were controlling the glass quite well as well. I think at one point there was like almost a double-digit advantage on the glass. The Celtics just dominated the way they controlled the pace of the game. And just to add context here again, I'm just going for this. The Nuggets are 11th in the NBA this season in terms of transition frequency. With 19.4% of their overall offense comes in transition. That's 1 in 5, so 20% basically. 1 out of every 5 offensive possessions from Denver comes in transition. In terms of effective field goal percentage, they're second in the league in transition, 25.9 points per game. No, they're second in the league in effective field goal percentage. They're 5th in the league in points per game, 25.9%. Sorry, 25.9 points per game. So they're an elite, or at least a very high level transition team. Boston took that away, man. 9.7% of the Nuggets' entire offense came in transition. They more than cut that shit in half.
And what this does is it makes up for any margin of errors on the other side. Because, yes, we're down 2 starters, so we're down a lot of firepower there. The Jays, neither of them, I thought, had a very good game. They were 9 for 30 combined. And you still are able to really control and dominate a team that's, a borderline championship contender. That's all on your defense. That's just something really special about this team. That's next level stuff. If the Jays are off, you have starters out, and you could still take care of business against the MVP, I'm taking that all day.
Yeah, and I think that this speaks really highly to the amount of defensive versatility on the roster itself, right? Like, not only, as you mentioned, you got starters out, you've got Drew Holiday out, who's arguably your best on-ball and like point of attack defender. I'd argue Jaylen Brown's probably there too, but apples to oranges, whatever. Drew Holiday's out, so one of your best defensive guys that is incredibly talented when being asked to cross match, when being asked to guard 1 through 5. Drew can do everything. With him out, and then your best rim deterrent and rim protector out, and you still control the paint that way. And you still limit rim attempts that way because of the way everybody played angles, the way that they all bought into this defensive system and they all stuck to the game plan start to finish. That's impressive to me. Your best rim protector's not there, but the team still takes more than a 16% dip in terms of frequency. That's huge. So for me, this was a really good reminder that, and I've said this on this show, I've said it in writing, this was a great reminder that for all the discussion about the way Boston play offense and whether we like it or not in terms of 3-point variance and 3-point volume, the identity is on defense. And when this team locks in on defense, it's really fucking difficult to stop. And we saw it in the pick and roll too, right? Like the Celtics pick and roll defense, they strung loads of different things together. So what they were doing predominantly was they didn't really go too heavy into drop defense. I don't know if you noticed that. Every time they did, Jamal Murray would kind of cook them in the mid-range, and you got Westbrook, they can get floaters off on the left or the right hand. So they were getting hurt. So they played a lot more up to touch. And what they did is they'd have like Horford around the nail, and then they'd have Luke drop him, but he'd be protected by whoever was shading the nail, right? So that mid-range kind of area wasn't as available for guys. And then when they did switch, they switched, and then by playing up to touch, what up to touch means is your screen defender is literally either at the level of the screen or slightly behind the screen. And the reason it's called up to touch is because when your hand out, you can touch the screener, right? So you're up to touch the screener. From there, you have multiple options. You can switch, you can drop, you can hedge, you can show, or you can stay on your man. So you've got every opportunity available. And the way the Celtics kind of strung that together in terms of knowing when to switch, knowing when to stay, knowing when to pre-switch, when to drop, when to show, when to blitz, it made it really difficult to try and break this team down in terms of pick and roll manipulation. You couldn't really drag your dribble out because guys were jumping out on you in the night passing lanes. Guys were tagging roll men early. When they were tagging, they were Xing out. There was a lot of defensive execution on the perimeter to really put pressure on feeding that ball into the post and allowing Jokic to create, because the minute that ball touched the post, triggered the next defensive mentality of where you start walling off the paint. So it was all very methodical. We don't want you creating out of the pick and roll because we want you kicking it into the post, because now we can take away the paint and Jokic is forced to do something crazy. So I just thought the overall game plan was fantastic. Sorry, I have kind of dominated that section now. I do apologize.
No, you did awesome. I do want to point out how much confusion it created for Denver. Like Malone had to burn basically all of his timeouts well before the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter because they just didn't know what they were getting hit with like over and over again. And it was all on the defensive end. Mm-hmm. And the other thing we have to do, we praise Luke Kornet a lot on here, rightfully so, but we have to praise the old guy. We got to praise the old man. We got to praise Al Horford. Guys.
Ageless Al.
That was a performance. To do that against Jokic, to do that, when we needed him, when we're down, 2 guys, Al's the man.
Ageless Al. It's his name, bro. Dude is... Doris Burke threw some shade during that game as well. I don't know if you heard it, but she was like, Al Horford's 111 years old. Cool. He's the best 111-year-old I've ever damn seen.
Yeah, he ain't going nowhere either, man. Like, if he keeps playing at this level, like I said, I think he's back next year. I mean, health permitting, I don't think he's retiring anytime soon.
I mean, it comes down to me, like, he doesn't need money anymore. Like, he's made obviously every NBA player that's at a decent level makes generational wealth. But his last contract and then the extension, if he does stick around, I think it's going to be on veteran minimums, or maybe just a little bit higher, just like we'll look after you 5, like your veteran minimums 2.8, we'll give you 4, or whatever it will be. Obviously, the cap rises every year, so that number changes. But I do think it'll be a year to year from now on. And I wouldn't be shocked to see him go the LeBron route, where it's 1+1, but I opt out every year and then make a decision in the summer. But dude's been fantastic all year. Yeah, you're not going to get the same level of game-to-game production that you did a few years back, but his leadership, the way he just understands how to control angles, understands when to be physical, when to sag off a guy, when to dare a guy to make a move, when to kind of push upon him. Just the ability to read the game is ridiculous. And we talk about defensive IQ for a lot of players, and Al Horford is rarely in that conversation, but I think his defensive IQ is up there with some of the best.
Yeah, he's definitely underrated on that aspect because, I mean, this is the guy. I mean, we ask him to do the impossible. Hey, go guard Embiid, go guard Giannis, go guard Jokic.
And he does.
And he's always up to the task. And then he's going to bang out a couple threes on the other end too. I mean, he is just such a phenomenal player. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame basketball player
right there. And that championship last season cemented his Hall of Fame status for me. If they win again this year, it's a lock, absolute lock. But yeah, I do want to give him his flowers. I think he deserves it. I want to give Cornett his flowers as well. So I was doing a live stream over on Substack for the newsletter. Again, if you're not subscribed to the newsletter, subscribe there. If you're not subscribed to this YouTube channel, show some love. It's symbiotic. What posts on one doesn't get posted here, but we do try and link them as best as possible. And it's different content as well. Plus you get to see our faces, which is a reason to subscribe or not, depending on how you feel. But what I will say is, during a live stream on the newsletter site on Substack the other day, somebody brought up the fact that Luke Kornet had missed a couple of games for personal reasons. And obviously, I'm very big on, as soon as it says personal reasons on the injury report, that's it. I don't need to know anymore. I don't want to know anymore. Respect the guy's privacy. But the fact that he's come back and instantly, he had a bit of not a great game against, was it Cleveland? Yeah, I think it was Cleveland.
Yeah, that was the game before.
But then he really kind of slid straight back into life in the rotation against Denver and played his ass off. So I don't know what's going on with him away from court. I don't need to know. I don't want to know. But just to see him play, get his mind right and focus and play that way against Denver, that's a professional baller right there.
Yeah, I think this is the #1 Luke Kornet podcast in the world. Nobody has praised him more than us, and it's well-deserved.
And with that, I want to leave y'all to let me know in the comments what you thought of this defensive production, whether you think that type of defense would be sustainable against Denver in a series. I doubt we see Denver in a 7-game series in the NBA Finals, but I'm very, very aware that you don't bet against the best player on the planet, and Jokic is by far and large the best player on the planet. So you just never know. Do you think this would work? Do you think it would be a problem? Would Boston need to adjust? How would they adjust? That's what the comment section's for. I'll be active in there. Billy will be active in there. Show some love. Hit that subscribe button. Catch y'all tomorrow. Peace.
Peace.